concept that's abstraction is a concept that's intimately related to encapsulation. If you recall from the previous video, we were talking about how when encapsulating objects, so when putting together data and behavior, that is somehow related. So here we have the data and the behavior. Data here, behavior here. We only need to expose when we only expose what, like, we encapsulate it, but we only expose what needs to be exposed. And that's the main idea of what abstraction is. With abstraction, you're only gonna expose the data that someone who's gonna work with the project is actually gonna use, and not the one that is not. And same for the behavior. So this has two advantages. Well, first and foremost, if you're working with another person, or maybe yourself, if you forget about the class in like a few weeks, you could just think of it as a black box where you have like some inputs and some outputs. So since you only have access to like what you're actually gonna use to work with, it's like less information that you need to know about, so it's more easier, right? And same for the methods. Okay. So you can think of it as a black box. Another reason is security. Because maybe if you change this variable, this data, that you don't need to access the whole object might break, or same for the behavior. So yeah, that's the two main advantages of abstraction. Now we're gonna look into how to actually implement abstraction on a program. But before we look into that, we need to learn about packages. Package is a way of that Java has of organizing classes. So right now the reason why we can call dog here in the first place at all is because they are under the same scope. But if I were to put dog on a different container, so which we're gonna refer to as package, then I would not be able to access it here directly unless I import it, which is what I'm gonna do now. So I'm gonna put dog into a container which I'm gonna call animals. So here IntelliJ is already telling me to move it to this new folder. And here you can see that it's giving us an error because we need to import it. And in order to import a class from an object, you just type import the name of the package and then the name of the class. That's gonna instantiate objects. But here you might notice that it's giving us a new error, and the reason for this is that by default, if we don't put anything, this is already gonna have some kind of abstraction, as if in its visibility is being limited by default by Java. So we're gonna look into that now. So we have 4 different types of access modifiers. Also, quick disclaimer, I did not make this image, I just found it on Google. And these modifiers you put before the data, before any variable, before each method. And this is what's gonna determine in which way we expose our data. Again, abstraction. You only expose what you need to expose, to whom you need to expose it. So in this case, there are several scopes that we can expose data or behaviors to. There is the scope of the class that's gonna be accessible anywhere on any modifier. The scope of the package that we already learned what it was. It's like a container in which we can hold classes. So the scope of the package, like if we move main here, it would not give us this error. And likewise, that's why it didn't give us an error before, because by default, if we don't put anything, it's visible. If we don't put a modifier, it's gonna be this one, no modifier. And that's why it didn't give us an error before, because it was under the same package. Okay. And then we have protected, which is accessible on subclasses, even though it's not the same package. We haven't looked into what a subclass is yet. Well, we will in the next video on inheritance, so just keep this in mind for now. And finally, public, which is accessible anywhere. So here it gives us an error right now because it's on a different package. But if we change this to public, it will stop giving us that error because we're making it accessible outside of the package. We're exposing it. I'm gonna do the same for the getter and the setters. Okay, and now it's fine. So yeah, this is how you expose data and behavior, because you can, as you can see, you can expose it to different scopes. Okay. So if I were to, another quick example, say I want to make like a private one that's only accessible in the class. Let's modify this method a bit. Instead of just changing this variable, we're also gonna do the printing, so it's a bit more simple. So I'm gonna make one very silly method here called print, and what's gonna do is just print the text. And we're gonna call it down here. So as you can see, it's not giving us an error because private means that it's gonna be accessible on the class. Well, private or any modifier will make this accessible to the class. But since it's private, we cannot access it here. So if I put doc print, it's gonna give me an error because it's private. Even if it were on the same package. Again, remember this image. Okay. So yeah, that's the main gist of it. Again, abstraction. You only expose the data and the behavior that you need to for security, and also it makes it easier for others if there's less information they see. And then the way you expose it is this. You can expose it to different types of scope. So yeah, that's the main idea. See you on the next video, which is gonna be about inheritance.